Veteran Voice. I'm Larry McCullaugh, be your host today. Glad you tuned in for today's episode. Got a couple of guests that have something in common today. They were both in the medical field and MASH units, but in different time frames. So on the left here is Joe Walsh. Joe, welcome to the show.
Well, glad to be here.
I understand you were in a MASH unit in Korea.
Right.
Way back when?
The original MASH unit, we landed about July the 2nd, 1950.
Really? So
Right.
we're going to be comparing that to something that my other guest has been here, Colonel Johnny Knight. John, how are you?
Fine, Larry. How are you?
Good. Thank you all for coming out to the program today. I know that I know we're in the in Desert Storm in the MASH unit from Paducah here that went over there.
Yes.
And,
The 807 MASH Hospital Unit.
and you got some pictures that we're going to put up and talk about after a while too. So welcome to the program, both of you guys. Joe, why don't you start by telling us when you went in the military and where you took like your basic training at and how you got your assignment to a MASH unit?
Well, I entered the Army in August 18th, 1948. I took my basic training in Fort Knox. And I was wanting to get in the ordnance, but they didn't have any openings in there, so I took a volunteer to take a course in medical maintenance. So they sent me to Fort Sam, Houston, and I took a 6-week course in medical maintenance in Fort Sam, and from there they shipped me in Japan in about the last of January in 1949, and I was in the 5th Army Medical Depot stationed in Yokohama, Japan. And I stayed, we traveled all over Japan doing maintenance work on all of the hospitals in Japan. And I was stationed in Yokohama and stayed in there until the Korean War broke out. I stayed in the 5th Medical Depot until the war broke out in Korea, and I was supposed to be discharged I just joined for 2 years, and I was supposed to have been discharged August 18th, but then they decided that they needed me in Korea. I tried to talk them out of it, but they sent me anyway. So we left, put us on a train in Yokohama, all of our equipment and everything, and shipped us down to Sasebo, Japan. And then they loaded us on a ship named the Titania. So you can think, if you remember the Titanic, when we was on the Titania going over there, well, I imagine a lot of people's mind was on whether this thing was going to sink or not. And then about 5 o'clock the next morning, they decided they wanted to clear the weapons on the ship. So they started firing, and we didn't know if we were under attack or not. I don't know, we'd been out to sea maybe 4 or 5 hours, and then from there we went to Busan.
So your 2 years of enlistment ended up being how long altogether then?
So
how long did you stay in the Army then?
Had been in Japan almost 18 months when the Korean War started, and I left over there on June the 12th, 1953, and came back and was discharged after that. So I'd spent almost 30 months in overseas.
Extended vacation then.
Right.
Well, now, Johnny, I know that you've been in for a long time. You've attained the rank of full bird colonel, and you don't do that in a short period of time. Tell us when you first went in the military and your training and how you've kind of climbed through the ranks.
Well, actually, Larry, I originally started off in the Navy in 1971.
Really?
I went OCS into the Navy after college, and was in a fixed wing, going to be in a fixed wing unit and everything. But in 1972, they started what they called de-escalating, and they washed all the pilots out and sent everybody home. Pilots were sitting around walking the streets, couldn't find a job. So I got out that time and got married, and went back to school, and got out of dental school in 1977. And opened a private practice in Paducah, Kentucky. And Brad Mushler at that time they had cranked up the MASH Hospital Unit, I believe, in 1977. And 1981, Brad Mushler, who was an ER physician here in Paducah, was commander of the 807 MASH Hospital Unit there in Paducah. And he asked if I would come over and consider being the acting oral surgeon in the 807 MASH Hospital Unit. And at that time, I told him, I said, well, I've been kind of mistreated by the army, the military one time. I don't think I'd be interested again. And he said, just come over and try it and take a look. And I went over there and I was sucked right back in. That was in 1981. So I began in 1981 with medical end of the military as the acting oil surgeon with the 807 MASH Hospital Unit here in Paducah, Kentucky.
So you were in and out and then back in again.
Right, yeah.
I can see where Brad might be able to talk you into that. If I'm not mistaken, Brad was in Vietnam.
Yes, Brad did many tours, several tours to Vietnam.
Yeah, I know that when you guys went over for Desert Storm, it was he was the CO then, I believe, wasn't he?
Right. Yeah.
Go ahead, Joe.
I started to join the MASH unit when they opened when they opened up. For some reason or other, I changed my mind. I don't know why. I probably would have been. Well, no, if I'd have been in reserve, I wouldn't have been too old to go over there. They'd have sent me right back, I'm sure.
Then you'd have really seen some changes.
I'm sorry.
I said you'd have really seen some changes. That's one of the things I wanted to hit on today. Is now you talk about the original MASH unit, and that you say that's the one that they based the TV show on.
Right. Right.
So that was a long-running show that I know a lot of people, even today, still enjoy watching the reruns. I know I do, because there was always some funny stuff in there, but there was always a serious side to it also, and it kind of gave you the best and the worst of what was going on. So to tell us a little bit about how well, first off, did you think this? I mean, you know, Hollywood's going to take it's going to have its fun with what they do and stuff like that. Were there certain things in the show that you thought were realistic and credible, or did you think that the whole thing was way out in left field?
Most all of the medical stuff, you know, was the people getting shot and coming in the hospital and all of that. That was really real. But, you know, like I said, when we moved that hospital 36 times in a little over 11 months, so while I was there, there wasn't a lot of time for the joking and stuff I mean, we did some joking and stuff, but not like that's on the MASH unit. Of course, what they did after I left, I don't know. And my friend of mine at Ed Heinz in Tigard, Oregon, he stayed over there for about another 2 months after I left, and he said that, of course, they were still trying to get settled down, I guess. But as far as we had a helicopter squadron attached to us, and we had an ambulance squadron attached to us, you know, and everything in there was real. And we had some of the guys, Hawkeye and kind of stuff like that, you know. We had a few doctors that you could put in those categories, and some of the nurses and stuff were just, you can kind of look back at the people that you were with, and you could see some of those people into the people that were the actors actually in the hospitals, you know, in the program. But like I said, we had some fun and we had some bad times, but there's I'd like to say it was pretty real to me.
Yeah, it was quite an experience back way back
yeah.
then. Now, John, you were I know that you went to the Desert Storm with the MASH unit here, right?
Right.
And
in
you
1990, 91.
And how long did you end up being over there? I mean,
We were there. I got back on 180 days.
Really?
106 months.
My gosh.
180 days. It was. First, let me tell you a little bit about MASH Hospital. What does MASH stand for? MASH stands for Mobile Army Surgical Hospital. It is majorly it's an emergency treatment type hospital where they save lives. Okay, and we normally stay back. We call it the line of FEBA for the MASH Hospital. Forward edge of the battle area. We were supposed to be 40 miles back. And we had an air ambulance attached to us. We also had ground ambulance. And we also had a transportation company that carried all of our hospital for us and everything. We had everything after the Korean War, they started setting up a hospital that was kind of modular, like it had a jet turbine that drove all the electricity. It's like a city all in one. You've got everything that you need right there, all your power, everything. and they called that the must unit, and actually it looked like a before we do into the Temper system in back in the late 80s, it was called a must unit, and it looked like you've seen these Quonset huts.
Yeah.
A Quonset hut, and for you people who don't know what a Quonset hut looks like, it looks like a half shell. Okay, it's a half shell, and you can see these buildings out here that are kind of semi-round, half circle around it. That's a Quonset hut. But only this Quonset hut was a hospital, and it had the OR in it. They had everything in it, but actually it blew up with air. It was actually it was just a great big balloon type thing that they blew up with air. The only thing bad about it is you shoot it full of holes, it's going to collapse, you know. And then in the 80s, they came up with what they call a temper tent system. Mobile Army Surgical Hospital is a 60-bed hospital. You got 60 beds in it with a ward, and you have an OR, you have lab, you have physical, you have the ER, you've got everything there. It's just a small hospital, but your main goal there is to save lives, and then get them back. You know, keep them breathing, keep them alive, get them back where they can have more definitive treatment at the Combat Support Hospital or back at a general hospital, whatever.
And there was a Combat Support Hospital there also in country nearby, or was
No,
that
there was no Combat Support Hospital close to us, and what you would do, you would normally either your ground ambulance brought your casualties in, or they came in by air ambulance. Most of ours came in by air ambulance, helicopter. And we had a helicopter pad out there. We had a helicopter all laid off and everything, and they bring them in, and we take the victims from there. Turnover time, you know, now they have changed the system, and we'll go into that a little later, but you still lost people who could be saved. You know, you got that what you call the golden hour. The first hour is the most important hour. Is the most important thing for a victim if he's seriously injured. After that hour, his chances of living, you know, are greatly diminished. So we achieved that later on with what we call a forward surgical team, and did away with the MASH hospital units. But it was the MASH hospital unit was a great unit. It was consisted of 250 personnel, had 60 beds in the hospital. Most of our beds were filled with prisoners, actually Iraqi prisoners during Desert Storm.
Really?
Yeah. We just didn't have that many casualties that were our own boys that were casualties. We had a lot of them in there, and we lost a few. But mainly it was mainly what we had in our hospital were the victims were the Iraqi victims.
So when injured people came in, it made no difference?
No.
side
We
they were
treat
on?
life and limb is, you know, it's all the same. We don't look at the enemy that way. You can't. That's what we're there for, to save lives.
Well, you guys were a lot better set up than what we were, because when we went to Korea, you know what we had for generators? 2 horse-and-a-half Briggs & Stratton motors, 250 watts each.
Oh, really?
And Ed Hines and I, whenever we'd go by someplace, this later on, we'd made quite a few midnight requisitions. If we'd see a generator or something sitting on us, you know, where we could get away with it, we stole it.
No.
And when we left, we had 2 big diesel generators, 4 gas generators. They were all sitting on trailers. We had stolen enough trucks to pull them with. And we had tents. A lot of times we set up in tents. A lot of times we set up in old abandoned school buildings. And we did all of our own tearing down of the hospital unit and packing it up.
Exactly.
And moving it from one place to the other. Ed Hines and I were kind of the advanced team. We would go
Advanced party, good. Next
advanced
location.
party, then we'd go up and set up the tents and everything, and then when it got safe enough, the doctors would come up, and then after that, the nurses would come up, and then we'd go back and tear down and pack up what was left of the hospital back there. Then we'd come back to the company, and then the company commander would tell us where to go next, you know, and we'd take off in the trucks and go, and they'd have signs or wherever to tell us how to get to either a place to set up our tents or to get into an abandoned school building.
So you really were mobile then? You
Oh
guys
yeah,
were-
we were
Oh, yeah.
mobile. We were mobile.
You had to be
period.
mobile. I mean, it's a task. I mean, we sit here and talk about this, about tearing down a hospital and,
Yeah.
and making a jump, and going to another location. But it's easily said, but I'm telling you, it is a monumental task. We were on the desert at that time, and there was nothing out there. I mean, as far as you could see, there was nothing. And you had what you call the MSR, main supply route. If you could keep it located, because you'd have these dust storms that come in and just cover up everything, you'd lose your MSR, your main supply route that you travel on. But we used it. He was talking about a while ago. If you didn't need it, it was called LOD. Lost on the desert. Okay, and if you found something, I mean, there was stuff out there on that desert. There was the biggest junkyard you had ever seen in your life. And if there's something there that you did need, that you could utilize, it was called FOD, found on the desert.
Well, what we call ours was midnight requisitions.
We did that.
So if you didn't have it and you needed it, you found a way to...
Well, when we were maybe going forward or coming back, if we saw something that we thought we needed, well, we picked it up. We didn't care who was around, or if we just go in there and act like we owned the place, and if it was a generator trailer hookup on a truck, maybe I'd steal it and he'd take off with the other truck. We did whatever was necessary to get what we needed.
So it was a lot like the MASH TV show.
Oh, yeah.
Did you guys did y'all have a little radar that would find the stuff?
Oh,
Or
you'd submit whatever you could get, whatever. I mean, it was just, that's the way life was.
everybody worked together
You're
then?
not kidding. We were all one, and we were thieves and everything you could possibly be. We had to be, and you had to utilize anything. I mean, I can remember just nothing more than a shoestring, and you saved that shoestring because you knew there was something that you're gonna need that shoestring tied up with. I mean, it was just the way it was. If you found it, that's something you needed.
Well, that's the way we did when we, of course, we had wires, and they gave us some wiring and everything, to wire up the hospital with. But when we got through, most all of ours was in black and friction tape, because whenever we set up in a hospital, even if it was in a school building, we string wires down the hall, and then you just cut into the wires and put whatever electrical supply was needed into that room, and then when you got through, you took it down and taped it up and went to the next.
That's right.
Went to the
You
next
salvaged
place.
everything.
And
Yeah.
once that you got the generator started and the hospital was going, you worked on all the electrical lines that were live. You didn't shut off any generators or anything. You worked on it live to keep, so that you didn't lose any power.
Joe here was talking about that the only power systems they had. We had large generators, with us, 4-cylinder diesel generators that we pull behind our vehicles, and they gave us. We had several of those, and they gave us our power. We had it much better. I know back in his day, you didn't know what air conditioning was, did you?
No.
Well, see,
no,
now
we
we're
didn't.
out there on the desert in 100 anywhere from 125 to 130 degrees. Okay, and we had AC. We had AC, and the temper tent system that we utilized in a whole hospital. Actually, it's a tent inside of a tent, and then it would have your cooling system ran down in a vinyl container, and you'd have flaps that you would open, and it was nice and cool inside the hospital.
Really?
Oh yeah, it was nice and cool. But once you walked out, you would just instantly cool.
Like summers in Paducah, you walk out the door, it's
Like
like
it
a
is
blast
outside,
furnace.
just
Yeah.
it's a given moment, but it was
We
cooking.
sure didn't have anything like that. We
No.
had, in the wintertime, we had space heaters.
We had
gasoline
space heaters in the wintertime. Yeah.
And that's all that we had. You try to heat a whole school building with about 5 or 6 space heaters. It's impossible.
Yeah.
And the cold was cold,
Oh,
as
the
I
cold
understand.
was cold.
People don't think, they think Iraq is hot all the time, but they have winter there. And in the wintertime, we're talking in January, February, March is their winter there. It gets down up in the daytime, it'll get up to about maybe 62, 63 degrees. At night, it would get down to around close to freezing, okay? And the wind's blowing constantly, even at night. I mean, at the lowest, lowest breeze, 10 miles an hour, 10, 12 miles an hour, something like that. And it's 34 degrees, and you got nothing. You're in a GP small tent. I'm telling you, you are cold. You are cold, so cold. And you have those little old kerosene heaters inside, that you would try to keep warm with. Unless you just stood next to them, you couldn't get any warmth out of them. So it's cold out there on that desert. They have a winter out there, and it's really cold. But when it turns off, it turns spring and summer. Man, it gets hot, excruciatingly hot. But it was interesting.
So you had both ends of the spectrum,
Oh, yeah.
or both ends of the scale there then.
And it would rain. We had what they call on the desert there. They had what they call schmalls, and actually it's just like a dry land hurricane. And we went through 3 or 4 of those. It would get up, cloud up, and then the winds would get up to about 50, 55 miles an hour, and then the rain would start, and the rain was like a fine mist. But if it hit your skin, it was just like needles because the wind was at 55 miles an hour. And then it would gust up to about, maybe 85, between 85 and 90 miles an hour. Of course, you're living in tents. The tents are gone. You're out there for survival. Now you're underneath a vehicle somewhere holding on for dear life. And and we had a lot of women in our hospital. We had to take care of those women first to make sure that they were safe and secure, and then, ourselves. And everything you had would missile and blow away. Everything you'd have, missile and blow away. And the next day you got up and we'd go out traipsing across the desert, pick up all of our tonnage and everything else is blown away. And that happened to us about 3 or 4 times.
Is it like a gigantic police call trying to find all your stuff?
It was, gigantic police call. I mean, stuff was gone everywhere. We would, that happened to us 3 or 4 times. And those winds would get up to 85 miles an hour. They'd come back down to about 50, 55 miles an hour. Then about 20 minutes later, it'd gust back up again. It would do that 3 or 4 times before the storm would blow through.
Oh, now, did you have any serious blizzards while you were in Korea?
Well, we had quite a bit of snow especially when we were up in northern Korea. Now we were in Pyongyang, Korea, when the Chinese broke through, and Ed Heinz and I we had gone on this advanced unit, and we were within about 7.5 miles of the border of the Yalu River. You could look down the valley and you could see the Yalu River, and we had driven all night that night, and was pulled out our heaters that you heated up the water with, on their sea rations and everything. And we noticed a lot of people going back south, but we didn't have any radio, no communications at all. We noticed a lot of traffic heading back south. We couldn't figure out what was going on, so we had pulled into this schoolyard and was getting ready to heat us up some sea rations for breakfast, and all of a sudden here come a Jeep into the schoolyard and said, "What in the hell are you all doing in here?" I said, "Well, we're going to set up a hospital." And he said, "Get your butt out." I said, "Don't you know the Chinese broke through last night?" So we dumped out the water, threw the cans on the truck, and he was in charge of a mortar company, and he broke up his convoy and let us get in between them so that we could get out of there. And we got fired on a couple of times before we ever got out.
So the Chinese came through and
If
nobody bothered
it
telling you
hadn't been
about
for him, I'd have still been over there pushing up daisies somewhere, But we didn't have any idea what was going on because we didn't have any radios, no communication at all.
Now, when you were set up as the MASH unit, did you have like field phones to communicate between tents and stuff like that, or did you have a radio room like they had on the TV show where you could communicate with, or was it pretty much phone lines?
Well, I'm sure they had after we got into Weijongbu. Now, I never did see any radio that I can remember in our outfit at all. Like what was his name, Radar?
Yeah.
But we had our commanding officer was Colonel Tender, and he was from somewhere in New York. And we had a guy that was kind of like radar that tended to the colonel, you know. But I don't ever remember radio being in there. I don't know how they communicated, but I'm sure we did.
Now, the communication y'all had in Desert Storm, I know that today it's amazing with the, computers and stuff and email and cell phones.
Yeah.
How far had it come when you all were in Desert Storm? I don't think I don't know if cell phones were.
Oh, no. We had no cell phones or anything like that. We did have some, we had radios equipped on our vehicles. On certain ones, it was certain vehicles. I was with the commander in the, Brad Mushler in the command vehicle, and we had a radio on there, so we kept up mostly, in moving in convoy and everything. They were scattered out down through the radios in the units were scattered down through. We keep in communication with each other. As far as the just hand operated, we had them, but we didn't use them much. Everything would be passed down to us through a communication. They'd bring it in when we were to make a jump with a hospital or something like that, or we needed medical supplies or something. We had communication. We get with them.
Well, I'm sure our chopper pilots had communication.
Yeah, that's what we
and probably the ambulance
we
people
use,
did too. But as far as our outfit having a radio, I don't even know. I guess we had people that just knew what we needed and they went and got it,
So, like, for example, when a helicopter would be bringing a wounded in, a lot of times you would know you had wounded coming by the.
You could hear them. You could hear them way off, or whenever they'd leave. You know that they wouldn't be long before they'd be back. But he was talking about saving the people's lives was the most important thing, which it was with us too. But we had a 98% survival rate.
Really, that's amazing for back then.
Rate that was the first MASH unit was never operation. And I didn't know that until I went to. We had our last reunion in Phoenix in 2003. That's our 53rd reunion out there. That's the only one I went to. But this Dr. Hesse, he was a corpsman over there, and he's the one that got everything, all of the reunions and everything together. And he's the one that told us that we had a 98% survival rate.
That's pretty amazing for the kind of injuries that you'd be dealing with.
And then, of course, we treated Korean, North Korean prisoners, Chinese, anybody that came in the hospital that was wounded, they were taken care of. So just like he said, there's no differential between anybody. When they come in and they were wounded, they got taken care of.
Everybody bleeds red when they're injured or wounded.
Yeah, if you'll remember back during 90 and 91, actually the war didn't last but maybe 3 days. That was about it.
I knew it was quick.
Yeah, it was over in 3 days. But we stayed, our MASH hospital stayed in Iraq. Everybody else, all the rest of the armies came out of Iraq. But our MASH hospital in the 807, we were left in Iraq. We were located about 80 miles southwest of Basra. And after the war was over with, our hospital, starting day one, we operated at maximum capacity until they pulled us out of the theater. And the reason being was we stayed in Iraq. We had no protection up there. We were left up there about 80 miles southwest of Basra. But at that time, Saddam Hussein was punishing the Shiites in Basra for aiding the United States at that time. And he was coming down, he's a Sunni, and they were coming down and just slaughtering the Shiites at that time. And our hospital stayed just at maximum capacity around the clock all the time. We treated folks. I mean, just day in, day out, round the clock, until from the time we went into the berm into Iraq until we came out in May.
My
They
gosh.
brought us out. I mean, we
So,
worked.
so for you guys, it wasn't just the short 3 day
No.
3 day
Oh,
thing.
no.
There was
It
a
was
lot more to it.
continuous. Yeah. They even considered us. He was not only doing that to the Shiites in Basra, but he had shoved all the Kurds up around the border up there around Turkey, and that's where the Kurds are located now. And they were going to take our hospital unit at that time. When they pulled us out, they had intentions for us to go up to in through Turkey and come across the border and help the Kurds up there, because Saddam Hussein at that time was slaughtering the Kurds up there. And it was just it was a good thing. You know, we saved a lot of people, and we operated around the clock. There was, you hear that old term, no rest for the wicked. Man, there was no rest.
Well, I know you brought some pictures along, Joe. Unfortunately, you told me most of your stuff got stolen before you left Korea.
Everything I had got stolen about a month before I left over there. The only thing I've got left is this. Only thing I've got is just one picture, and that's it.
Well, I know we've got some pictures that you brought, Colonel. So let's. And this is during Desert Storm, or right around that time period?
Yeah, it's just during Desert Storm. All the pictures are Desert Storm.
See if we can put those up and kind of tell us what we've got going on. You can explain where you're at.
All right, what you see here, actually, this is the very first day of the war. And we had gone up with the 1st Armored Division. And I had there was the ground ambulance company that was connected to us, that was attached to us. There was a major type in there, and I can't recall his name. But he told me long before we went across the Burma into Iraq in the first day of the war, he told me, he says, we're going to be treating patients on the back end of these 5-ton trucks before we get the hospital set up. And sure enough, the first day of the war, we're still in our trucks and stuff, and we got up that morning, and we got a communique came in that they were bringing in casualties. And we were seeing these casualties. They were bringing them in by air ambulance. We were bringing them in on helicopter, and we were treating them on the ground and on the back ends of the 5-ton trucks, just like I was told, you know.
So you didn't have things set up?
We
you
had nothing set up. Had nothing at all set up. And there we were from day one. That's how we started off, and that's the way we stayed. I mean, till we got the hospital set up. We made, like I said, 7 major jumps during a period of 6 months there, you know, out on the desert. There you see the ground ambulance. There's we're treating patients there, and you see the ground ambulance company, a part of them that's attached to us and everything. And we're getting ready to start set up our hospital right there.
Okay.
This is you're looking inside the emergency room in there, or kind of an emergency area where they're first brought into and everything. You can see the some of the meds and stuff that are located. We had in the temper tent system. You had, they looked like containers. You've seen a 20-foot container on the back of a truck,
yeah.
What they call a sea container. You know, you've seen them on the back of a 20-foot long. Well, we had these containers, and they're called like a Connex,
yes.
But actually it folded out, and it raised up on stilts, off the wheels, set on stilts, and your operating room, you'll see a picture here in a minute, and an OR, and you folded it out, and it made an operating room, which was connected to the temper tent system. All right, we had several of those. You'd have the lab was in there. You had 2 ORs and different things. You had different areas that were set up there that these units fold out. That you made. There were actually wall-to-wall rooms.
Quite a bit different from what these fellows had to go through when they were told to
we
bug
didn't have
out.
anything that plush.
No, because with you guys, it was just all basically tents and that type of stuff.
We worked from just tents and abandoned school buildings, you know. Anything that we could set up in is what we operated out of.
My gosh. Well, let's see what else we've got up here.
There's a system. There's one of the boxes right there you're looking at, like Connex. And when it folds all the roll of ceiling out, it extends, walls out and everything. That's the OR right there, and we're doing surgery's being performed on one of our casualties.
Well, that's amazing.
This is a clown. That's like I said, as the old surgeon, I did take this friend of mine. I did take the tooth out, you know, but we had a little fun. You've always heard that term. Yeah, the dentist crawled up my chest, put his knee in my chest, you know, before he took the tooth out.
So,
hey, you know, it's for real, okay.
That's part of the fun you have.
This is the oil fires. If you recall, there was about a 40-mile stretch there where Saddam Hussein had come down and set all the oil wells on fire. And we were located in that area. This is when we came back in closer to the Kuwait. This was just outside Kuwait in Iraq there, or it's still in Kuwait there. We were located there, and the oil fires had not been put out at that time, and we lived in that stuff for about, I don't know, I'm going to say 2 or 3 weeks. We lived in that stuff.
My God.
It would get so dark, actually you would think it was night, and we had to turn all of our light systems on. You couldn't see. It was just like it was dark.
It really was that thick then.
Oh, it was that thick. Oh, you just had oil all over you. I mean, it was everywhere. It was really nasty.
Boy, that's amazing.
That's a picture of our convoy. That's, if you see in the center there, that's Dr. Brad Munchler, or Colonel Munchler. On the right there is one of my sergeants is still in with me. His name is, oh shoot, and that's Kathy Greer. She is a full bird colonel now. She is a nurse type.
Wow, fantastic.
And she should be, if she hasn't retired yet, talk to her. She's in D.C. And that's just like I said, you see the road there? That's the MSR on the desert. And look how far you can see, and you see nothing but flat. It just disappears.
Boy, that's something else.
That's when they're set up. Now you see one of the Connex boxes like we're set up where you see the wheels underneath it, and you see it's all folded out, and it's just a great big unit on the inside there. Okay. That we had a lot of trouble with. This is a Bedouin. After the war was over with, there were mines and munitions all over that desert. I mean, they were everywhere. You did not get off that MSR main supply route. I mean, when you stepped out of that vehicle, you hugged that vehicle all the way around because I'm telling you, there was stuff everywhere, and people were getting blown all to pieces. The Bedouins lived on the desert. That's their home, and they would stay a while one place on the desert and drag up, move to another. And this is one of the Bedouins. And a lot of the horses and stock and everything were killed. A lot of the Bedouins and their children got out and got into, mines, into minefields and so forth, because he had mined the country all over and mined everything. And they were getting into them and getting blown all to pieces, and we were taking care of them, But that's one of the Bedouins right there. Now you can see there's a good picture of the ground ambulance company that was attached to us. You can see all those ground ambulances down through there.
You got a slew of them there, don't you?
Yeah, quite a few. Yep. This is what majorly our hospital has moved in, was, you see the containers there, We'd load up and everything. We had a transportation unit that was attached to us, and they'd load them up. They actually would drive across 18-wheelers. And then they stayed stuck all the time because they get out there in that sand and so forth. But they had a wrecker with them, which was nothing more than a modified Abrams tanks, what it was. Had a boom on it. And they could pick them up, they get stuck, they pick them up and get them out of the hole, and run with us. That's kind of, you start the layout, you get all your stuff in, and you're getting ready to take everything out and put up your hospital. Now you're looking at the hospital unit, and we're out there playing softball or doing something right there, I think.
Getting a little exercise,
Yep,
huh?
Yep, getting a little exercise. Haircuts. Yeah. I had that's the first time in my life when when we went into Al-Kabar, we first got over to Kuwait and in Saudi Arabia, and we were at Al-Kabar, and I had a little hair on me. Of course, being military, we didn't have a whole lot, but I told one of the sergeants, he had some barber shears with him. I said, would you just trim my hair back, pretty close and everything, And I'll never forget, I was sitting there, and he said, lean your head over. I leaned my head over, and he took those shears, and all of a sudden I saw a big blob of hair hit the floor, and I kind of looked up at him. He says, sir, I only know one style. It was to the scalp. And everybody followed. What was good about it is all the men followed suit after that. Everybody got their all their hair.
So you didn't feel like the odd man out. Right. Everybody's going to look the same.
Everybody had it all taken off. So it was a good thing.
That's great. Man, that's crazy. Well, it's good that you got some of those, pictures and things. Was there any more that we didn't see there? Did we get to
I don't
all
know.
Honey, we got any more back there? Or? That must be it. Okay, all right, good deal. But it's things like that you don't realize when you're taking those pictures. I remember I had some Super 8 movies that I took when I was in Vietnam, and on Christmas we had the Rice Bowl. You know, right there on the base, we had a street there, and we chose up teams and got the football out, and they had the Rice Bowl on Christmas Day because they had the ceasefire and stuff. But I look back at those movies now, and I think, man, we thought we're a bunch of kids over there. We didn't know any better. Which is what I see today when I look at the young men and women that are fighting the war on terrorism is the young people. Now, I guess since you were a reserve unit that was activated to go to Desert Storm, is that right?
Right.
Okay, and how many were in your company again? Did you say 26?
You have a 60 bed hospital, and you got right at 250 personnel. That consists of teams of physicians, I think 14 physicians, something like that, and then one oil surgeon, and I was the acting oil surgeon. But you wore many hats. I was also the chemical officer, and I was also took care of our water system. I was in charge of the water systems. That brings up a memory. After the war was over with and we were operating at maximum capacity, we had a bladder that was that held water, it was about as big as this studio. It's probably 40 by 40, and it held 20,000 gallons of water.
Ooh.
Well, they made contact with me and said, the division is moving out. We're leaving you up here in Iraq. What do you need? And I said, I need my bladder filled up with water. I need 20,000 gallons of water. Well, I watched the division move out. We all watched the division move out for about 3 days. It took 3 days for the whole division, and I was not getting any water. Finally, I saw in the division there a couple of trucks pulled off, flatbed trucks with what I call them they look like giant toothpaste tubes. Being a dentist, but they look like giant toothpaste tubes. What they were bladders. Each one of them held 20,000 gallons of water. Okay, or fuel. They did fuel in them too. Okay. Well, here comes I see them coming across the desert to our unit, and I had some things to do, and of course they got up there. This Spec 4 gets out of the truck, runs out, and he says, "I'm looking for Major Knight." And I said, "Hey, I'm Major Knight. What can I do for you?" He said, "I have," and he had the trucks there with the toothpaste tube, and I thought that was my 20,000 gallons of water, And he said, "Sir, I have brought you your 20,000 gallons of diesel fuel that you requested."
Oh no!
Oh yes, and we were zero with water at that time, zero with water, and he bought me 20,000 gallons of diesel fuel. I told him, I said, "Get back on the MSR." I said, "Don't need it, get out of here." And I had to make arrangements right then, and we found there was about 80 miles down the road on the MSR, there was a little old oasis town down there, and it had 3 wells in that town, and they had water purification units came up, and just at that moment, the next day, they had gotten into the wells, and they were purifying water. And we had our MASH hospital unit has a truck with a 1,500 gallon tank on it, and then you have what you call a water buffalo that held between 450 and 500 gallons of water. I spent the next 4 or 5 days running up and down that MSR, from sun up till sundown, trying to keep our hospital loaded with water.
Oh my gosh! Now, Joe, what'd you all do about? I mean, you were talked about your sea rats and stuff, which we had in Vietnam also. What about water? Did they truck that into you? Or?
Water trucks furnished us water, and then about once every 6 weeks or something like that, a shower unit would come by and we'd get to take a shower. Maybe they'd set up in a river or something, and that's where we took our showers. Mm-hmm. We'd go over there and they'd start that shower unit up, warm up the water, and we'd take a shower. And other than that, if you got ready to take a bath, you did it in your helmet, or you found you a creek or a river somewhere and took you a bath.
Just whatever you could do.
But we always had plenty of drinking water.
Yeah, we had bottled water. They brought us bottled water. We always had bottled water. But the thing about water, we're out there on the desert. There's not any water anywhere. And when we ran on this water shortage supply of water, all of our water had to go to the hospital. And either that or you drink your bottled water. There was no taking baths. We went 38 days out there on that desert without any type of shower or bath.
Oh man.
You talking about a bunch of stinking people. it was
That's one good defense to keep the enemy away. It's like, man, I ain't going near that place. You smell those Americans?
Our clothes were beginning to rot on us.
Oh
That's
Lord.
no joke. That's no joke. Oh, it was,
Well, that's the thing when you get a big unit like that going, you've got to supply them. You know, that's
you got to do what you got to do.
That's always been the case. in war.
Self-preservation, you know, and do what you got to do. It was. You look at it back now. I've never been that nasty and miserable in my entire life. But I look at it back now, and it's funny. It's
But nowadays,
humor.
you really enjoy, you know, that nice shower and
Well,
maybe a
sometimes-
bath every now and then.
Sometimes our fatigues would be just greasy, you know, because unless you could find a river somewhere
Wash your
sometimes,
clothes.
you had to wash them in the river, or sometimes we would have maybe we'd have some Koreans that would do your laundry for you,
Yeah.
but
See, that's what we did in Vietnam. We had the mama sons would come onto the base, and
yeah.
they had to be registered and have their little badges and stuff. And
We
they
didn't
would they would wash your clothes for you, and you paid them like I think $5 a week or something.
We weren't that fortunate.
You didn't
We
even
weren't that
get to have
fortunate.
those.
When
Huh?
we had water, everyone had what they called the blue bucket, and it was actually a plastic bucket about yay big around. It's a little bigger than a bushel basket, okay, and believe it or not, you could wad your little butt up and get in that thing, you know, and take a bath. But that's all you had to take a bath in. And when you got through taking a bath, you washed your clothes in it, and you rinsed your clothes, and that's all we had. And as fast as you could out there on that desert, as fast as you could wash those clothes and get them somewhat clean and everything, and you'd drape them over a mirror on the vehicle or anything, you'd lay them over. As fast as you could lay them out there in 15 minutes, everything was dry.
Now, did he get where there's a lot of sand blue?
Neil, humidity was,
Yeah, you didn't have no humidity at all.
Yeah.
Really?
No humidity at all.
Gosh, I had better than I thought I did, I guess.
Oh well, no, we did it. And the storms, the dust storms. You didn't know whether a dust storm, you'd see it coming on the horizon. You just see a brown cloud coming, and you didn't know whether it was going to last 15 minutes or it was going to last 3 days. And many of them lasted 3 or 4 days. And I'm still to this day picking sand out of parts of my body.
I was
you know,
going to say, I bet that sand got into just absolutely everything.
You had your food. Hey, you learned to eat with a crunch. You know, I mean, you know, we were filing our teeth down on all the sand we had to eat in all of our food. It was in everything.
It was like getting a dentist treatment every day with
Yeah,
all
that's
that grit taking clean
yeah,
your teeth
yeah.
off.
Nothing like having a little solids in your meals. You know.
And Joe, he told us a story a little while ago about where he's supposed to be getting water and ended up with diesel fuel. Have you got any stories or anything that you
Well,
can tell that was kind of funny that other than the fact that it sounds like that you guys just were out doing them midnight
we'd go out,
requisitions?
let's say if we needed something, we'd find some way to get it, and do everything we could to get what we wanted. But you know, we had some fun, and there was good times and bad times. But I don't ever remember running out of drinking water. But we had snow. We didn't have any sand, but we had some snow, and it rained quite a bit over there too. But
Now John was talking about the size of his mesh unit. Do you know about how many people you had in
I
yours,
got
roughly?
trying to, in my mind, count up. I'd say we probably had maybe half that many.
Really?
But and we had I don't know 12 or 15 doctors, and about that many nurses probably.
Yeah. Oh,
And
yeah,
the rest of us were just support troops.
You
know.
were the ones that kept everything working.
Yeah.
medics and
The rest of us,
you got your
but-
medics, and then you got your commo people. You got you had several different. You had to operate independently, be able to operate independently. So you had all those folks that ran everything for you. You know,
And
all your generators.
Everybody worked together to make sure
Everybody worked
everybody
together.
got what they got.
Yeah.
Well, see, we took care of our own generators. We gassed up our own generators and everything. We did everything.
So
We didn't have what we call a support group. We were it.
Well, if nobody knew how to do something, then you just dug in and figured it out. I guess, huh?
But like I said, everybody knew what they what needed to be done, and it just seemed like that. I don't ever remember anybody really giving any orders, but they just tell you, you know, if you go here and do this, go here and set up, and there's a sign out there where to set up, and that's what we'd do. We'd go up there, and if we had to set up tents, we'd set up tents. Now, we did have, Ed and I had Koreans that worked for us. Now, we had one guy, he was a electrical engineer. His name was Che Sam. He could speak 7 different languages, and we'd take him with us, and he would act as our interpreter. And then also when we'd go up forward, well, they'd give us rice and millet and stuff like that, and we'd trade the rice and the grain for labor. They didn't trust us with any money, I don't guess. They just gave us food. So we'd take Chick with us and go up and set up the tents, and then we'd might have to go to a river somewhere and load up gravel and sand on 6x, come back and make the driveways and stuff, you know, for the ambulances and stuff to get into the tents. And we had cooks, Korean cooks. We had Korean cooks, and they did the KP work and all of that kind of stuff. But just as far as having a regular support group, we just kind of supported ourselves, I guess.
I know on the MASH TV show, that was the big joke, was the mess hall, trying to figure out what was what. Did you get hot meals every day, or
no?
No.
We were there 3 months before we ever got any fresh meat at all.
Really? So you were sea rats,
we were in Pusan in the I think it was the 5th Air Force. They flew in a bunch of turkeys, and frozen turkeys, and we were about, I don't know, 5 or 6 blocks away from them, and they had more than what they could use, and they gave us some turkeys, and that's the first fresh meat that we had. We had Vienna sausage 3 times a day for, God, I can't remember how long, but I can't even look a Vienna sausage in the face right now, hardly.
If they've given them away, you don't want any of them.
That guy, that mess sergeant, he would, one day he'd bake them, the next day he'd fry them, the next day he'd boil them, then he'd wrap them up in to powdered eggs and powdered milk, and cracker crumbs, and fry them. And you never see, it was wonderful. He could do a lot with Vienna sausage, I'll tell you that.
Had quite an imagination.
Yeah, he did.
Now, Johnny, would y'all have the LERPs then, or the MRIs?
We had MRIs at that time, but if we had a hot meal, the hot meal consisted of what they call them T-packs or tray pack, and it's an aluminum container about yay big, and it's got a foil top over the top of it, and it would have either a meat or vegetable in it. They have meat or vegetable in it, and you'd have maybe 3 or 4 entries. You know, you'd have some type of, one of them would be carrots, and the next one would be mashed potatoes, and the next one would be your main course meat. I can recall there before we went across the berm into Iraq for 2.5, 3 weeks, we ate creamed chicken out of a T-pack every single meal for 3 weeks.
Really?
Seemed like when they,
I couldn't stop, got where I can't handle this anymore.
when they get stuck on one thing, it seemed like he had that for a long time.
That's all there was.
But after our mess sergeant name was Sergeant Brock, and once he got the supply line started, he kept us pretty well. We had pretty good food after we once got settled down, you know. But he did pretty good for us. We'd have steaks, and
yeah, they'd occasionally fly steaks into us. I mean, that was a big deal when they'd fly. I mean, of course, every time they told us that we were going to have roast beef down at the mess hall, I knew that it was water buffalo. They weren't kidding me, because not only had somebody told me, I saw them sling the thing in, and I thought, we're having roast beef tomorrow. And sure enough, so
we'd have what they call, it was supposed to be corned beef, but everybody said it was horse meat because it was so stringy, you know.
But when you're hungry, you eat what you
yeah.
got. You know, it's amazing.
Those MRIs, they would, of course, during the wintertime, we would, a lot of things in the MRI that you wanted heated up. and you could heat it up. At that time, they didn't have. Now they have little heaters in each MRI. You get a heater in it now.
Really?
Yeah,
Cool.
a little water heater comes inside the thing where you can warm up your food. But then we didn't have them. All you had in there was food, and you wanted to warm it up. So what they would do is crack it, and, crack each little package, and then you had your kerosene heater inside your tent, and you'd lay your food on top of that kerosene heater and let it heat up on that kerosene heater. But it got to the smell of every one of them smelled the same. It got to be where my stomach would just turn when I'd walk into a tent, and that's what you smelled that MRI cooking on top of that heater. I'd just almost throw up.
Makes you appreciate a good meal
Oh
today.
yeah. We did. But that was as good as it got, and it wasn't bad.
No.
It wasn't bad. But I will tell you this: we didn't have any communication or letters from home or anything for about the first 2.5 months.
Oh, man.
Nothing. No one knew where we were, what we were doing, or anything. And then when they found out, I told my wife, I sent a communique back home. We had telephone systems where every once in a while you get to go use a telephone. And I told her, I said, send crackers and tuna fish and peanut butter. And I lived on peanut butter and tuna fish out of a can, until the end of the war, until we came back home. We were there for about 4 months.
Well, we had, I guess they were field rations, because you could get a can of about that big around, about like that, and had cheese in it. And then you'd get another can that had hardtack crackers in it.
Yep.
So you may have had cheese and crackers. That wasn't too bad of a meal. But
Well, that's better than nothing at all, actually.
Yeah.
Well, we're down to the last couple of minutes, guys, and I want to make sure that we don't forget anything, or you don't get finished and say, "Darn, I wish I'd have told them that." Have you got anything, John, that you want to share with everybody that?
Well, the main thing that I want to share is the fact that our hospital unit was all the personnel there. Most all of them lived in Paducah or surrounding area. They were in our, and when we went out and we went to war, we all came together, and we were one big happy family out there. Well, we had our internal problems. Believe me, we did, but we took care of them. But we were a fabulous unit. Did a fantastic job. I'm so proud that I had the opportunity to be a part of it.
Camaraderie really gets
Oh,
solid.
it does.
It
Really does. It really does. You come together.
Yeah.
You become brothers. I'm telling you, you do.
That's
you really do.
well, we had the same thing. Our outfit seemed like we all worked together, but everybody was from different places. We had, I'd say probably from every state in the Union we had people in there, but everybody, like he said, everybody worked together, and we got done what needed to be done, and it was some bad times, but there was some good times in there too. So.
Best times of your life and worst
Yeah,
times of your
Best
life.
time. That's right.
Wouldn't take $1 million for it, but I wouldn't want to do it again for $1 million.
Exactly how I feel. Hey, guys, I told you that this hour just flew by, and I really appreciate you guys coming on and sharing your experiences and letting us compare the difference and the Korean, but the camaraderie, I think, is the important thing that everybody's got to remember. And for the young people that are in there today, they're building bonds. I know that they're having the best and worst times of their life too, and they may not
Exactly.
realize it for a few years, but again, we always got to support the troops. So I want to thank you fellas for coming on the program today. I'd like to thank the viewers for tuning in. We hope you'll come back and see us next time on Veteran Voice.